man is stabbed to death in Wheatfield prison. Overcrowding in jails mean many don't finish out their sentences handed down by the courts. And bales of cocaine are stamped with the image of a famous footballer. These and other stories from our Crime World wrap-up. You're listening to Crime World, a podcast from crimeworld.com. Talk about a few stories that have happened overnight and a couple of stories that have been bubbling along during the week that we have missed because we've been too busy.
No mention of Daniel Kinahan today.
Anyway,
yeah.
What's the bets? We'll slide into a little bit of that, but we're going to try not to because we want to talk about these other stories. Now, last night, Thursday night, very late, there was news breaking that a prisoner, a 39-year-old, died after he was stabbed in his jail cell in Wheatfield prison. It's unusual that, essentially somebody is killed in a cell. It has happened before, but it is a highly unusual thing. And it's also probably anybody with somebody in prison, their absolute worst nightmare. To be stuck in a cell, locked in, not be able to defend yourself with somebody, attacking you is just terrifying beyond belief. Now, he was a 39-year-old man by the name of Brendan Gahan from Tala, and he was serving a 2-year and 9-month sentence for possession of drugs for sale or supply. He's not a kind of a Daniel Kinahan type guy. This is a very low-level criminal, with this, with previous convictions, obviously.
Yeah.
Who is, who's in this prison and is attacked.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the doors are locked.
With Brendan Gahan, you're talking about somebody who probably make up, the majority of the prison population. These are people with long-term addiction issues. That addiction has driven them. I think he's described during one of the most recent hearings as a polydrug user. He has been in courts, he's 39, so he's been in court. If you go back, you can see court records of him almost 20 years ago for very similar types of crimes. The absolute opposite of organised crime, if you want. Now, that doesn't mean there's not consequences. Some of these involve, maybe crimes that frighten people or terrify people, but you're talking about somebody that's primarily committing low-level crimes on a constant basis.
Totally related to the polydrug use, exactly. And what happens to these people is, as they initially come to the courts, usually they will, be determined to turn around their life, get off the drugs, go into rehabilitation. They will make promises to the judge. They will try maybe and keep them, but they slide back into addiction. And the more convictions they rack up, the less likely they are to continue getting these suspended sentences. Exactly.
And, that's not to say people shouldn't be in prison, but it does have a consequence of normalising that life. And also, it becomes harder when each time you come out to maybe get a job and settle down. Now, he's on 8G in Wheatfield, so it'll be kind of a general population, and there's no a violent incident occurred. Now, if you look at the background of it, there's a clear suspect who's been identified. That suspect is from Finglas. He would have also been of a similar age to Mr. Gahan, but his convictions would have been of a more serious nature, involving a higher degree of violence, often involving knife crime. There doesn't seem to have been any particular animosity between the two men, no background, no long-term sort of feuding or anything.
And had there
like
been,
that.
They wouldn't be sharing a cell because, of course, the prison system operates on a basis that each prisoner is assessed for, their own safety, basically. And lists are made up of who they are associated with and who perhaps they might have difficulties with.
Yeah.
And that's how, it's like, I suppose, people trying to seat relatives and friends at a wedding, that you want to try and make sure that those that are in close proximity to one another are not going to, have history of feuding or anything like that. So there was no background?
No,
here?
it's not. The initial investigation will be focusing on this is just a moment, a violent attack out of very little that has cost the man his life. Mr. Kinahan seems to have suffered a kind of a deep cut to the back of his head, presumably with a makeshift knife. Obviously, it's unlikely to be people in prison are they make, I don't know if it's a shiv or, something along those lines. So that would indicate, of course, that it may have come from while he was facing in the opposite direction. But to inflict that sort of wound involves a high degree of violence. There's no doubt about it. And of course, Brendan Kinahan will have people who love him, and it must be a terrible, terrible thing to wake up to that news, all right.
So let's talk about the suspect and those previous convictions he has to try and build up a little profile of, what this individual is like. So he has previous convictions, I think, for aggravated burglary, for false imprisonment, for robberies and attempted robberies. And he's described it as having had a reckless criminal career. He's targeted both old age pensioners in their own home as well as robbing children for their smartphones.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you're not talking about somebody that's an organised criminal, but you're talking about somebody that is reckless and violent. Obviously, this suspect is only a suspect at this stage, hasn't been charged or anything like it, but he does have a pattern of while Mr. Kinahan has a pattern of committing crimes to feed his addiction, and it may well be the case that this suspect also has an addiction, but he has used a higher level of violence, and that involves threats and also the use of knives in the past. So,
and they're often very large knives or Stanley blades.
Yes.
Now, Ken Foy was writing for us on crimeworld.com in relation to this, and he spoke to a source who told him he's an extremely nasty piece of work, and said that the night in question, when he attacked Mr. Kinahan, he had gone ballistic. He speaks about how prison officers heard a commotion and they went to the cell, opened the door and went in to find this terrible scene.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a terrible scene. And obviously, look, as we said, people, I suppose, have an impression sometimes that there is a constant level of violence in prisons. I mean, I'm sure there is to a degree, but actual fatalities are relatively rare. There is one that's going through the courts at the moment, and there was one in the last couple of years, a guy called Robert O'Connor who was killed in his cell. So they do happen. But, it's and I suppose, again, like we talked during the week about, look, all violence will never be eliminated from the prison system, just given the nature of people that are in there. But again, it does come in the week when Alison Chalk was released after those few weeks. And again, people who work in the prison system will constantly say that overcrowding is an issue. You might say now in this case, maybe that doesn't apply, but they will still say that their ability to move people around, also the fact that you can have 3 and 4 people in cells that are made for 2. All of these gives rise to a tension within the prison service. So it does. We do have to, in both of those cases, obviously Alison Chalk's a very different case, but she ultimately has been released from prison early because of overcrowding, because of there just simply isn't the capacity to manage everybody that's being put in prison. And the ones that are in prison, the prison staff feel increasingly under pressure to cope with the conditions inside.
And of course, Alison Chalk's case is so high profile that there's a social media, shall we call him solicitor, Terry Gorey, who's taken the case up, and he's spoken and described what has happened. He's actually gone viral on social media, and he says that the early release of Alison Chalk asks some tough questions for the Irish justice system. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I know we had a what would you say, friendly disagreement. Yes, I mean, I can understand that the prison service have these criteria and they tick off these criteria, and I think Alison Chalk meets their criteria for early release, not because she's a wealthy person, but because their criteria are very specific, which are, if they have not repeat offenders, and that they have maybe what they call now in courts the pro-social life, as in they work, they have family, they're very unlikely to reoffend. So she meets those criteria. I suppose the other argument is that she's in for a violent crime, and that somebody who might be in for repeated shoplifting is not getting early release because the criteria would be judged, so she's likely to reoffend. But, there's obviously a clear difference between a violent attack and somebody who commits non-violent crimes such as, maybe, shoplifting or something along those lines. I mean, it's certainly, I think he says in that clip as well.
How come he went viral and we didn't? Because he didn't.
Well, no, we did go viral. Everything we do goes viral.
No, well, he's made headlines for going viral.
Well, made headlines.
Okay, he says she was obviously eligible for some sort of an early release scheme. But what's the chances of being deemed eligible for an early release scheme if you come from a particular part of the country or city, or if you come from a particular background? What does a sentence of 2 years and 2 months actually mean if a person walks free from prison after a month? Yes, if you come from a particular part of the country or city where reoffending figures are higher than where she comes from, and if you come from a particular background where perhaps again the same thing is there's a kind of an earlier entry to criminality and reoffending statistics would be higher. Like, why didn't we go viral?
Well, we may go viral for this. I suppose you could say, look, her wealth certainly is family wealth to a degree. I'm sure she's worked hard in her life. Not taking that away from her, but she's able to go into court and present the fact that I'm a homeowner, I have a job, I have all of these things that are going to be affected by the fact she's in prison, and those then help her get out of prison early.
Well, they affect. I mean, she went in with all that for mitigation purposes for her sentence, but I think she and everybody else was pretty surprised she got that lengthy custodial sentence. I mean,
but what I'm saying is those criteria are still helping her get out early.
I don't think those criteria are
they are.
Surely.
Well, they will say,
where you live.
Well, no, the fact that she has all
previous offending. I think.
Yes, previous offending,
and I imagine that behaviour in prison. If anybody has got further detail on this, would be interested to know it. But I imagine that where you live and your family background has nothing to do with whether the prison allows you. You'd like to think anyway.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is her family background is inescapable from who she is, because she is able to go and say, well, of course I should be get out early. I've got a job to go to. Mm. Some of that comes from her family background, not just solely from herself. I mean, her job isn't good. She's not going to lose her job going to prison, for example, because she works in a family business. I don't think
they care whether you go back to a job or not.
They do care if you have a job. Oh, they do care if you have a job.
Okay.
They will care. All of these things are taken into account. Do you have somewhere to go? Do you have a life that you're likely to slot back into, where you're a productive life, a pro-social life? Well, she has all of those things, no doubt, but some of them are inherent advantages. I'm not saying it's basically as simple as maybe, I don't necessarily agree with him, but you can't totally separate things either. Either way, he is right in that
it focuses it puts the focus on the justice system, on the fact that there's overcrowding in prisons, on the fact that we have this enormously expensive system of bringing people to court, putting them before a judge, hearing the evidence and punishing them, and yet they're going in and coming back out because there's no room for them.
Exactly.
And that is definitely, as we spoke the other day, the problem there is the lack of expansion within the prison service, and it couples with the expansion of our population.
It does. And I mean, if you look at the case in Wheatfield, which is very different, but all prison officers you will ever talk to will say overcrowding is like a tinderbox in the prisons, and it just creates this atmosphere of violence. And in fact,
what happens? Going back to the death of Mr. Gahan in prison. Who investigates that? Obviously, the Gardaí are called in.
The Gardaí were called in pretty much straight away. There'll be a normal technical Garda investigation at the scene. So the crime scene officers have come into the prison. A post-mortem will be conducted to determine the cause of death. Obviously, a prison is very, very different than a murder that happens on the streets, because basically everybody knows where everybody is more or less at all times. There's CCTV all over the prisons. So it's going to be a very different type of investigation. But it's conducted by the Gardaí senior investigating officers appointed, and to say crime scene officers you see in the photographs all the time will be brought into the jail. It's happened again and again. But yeah, it's a Garda investigation. But it is different, like, obviously, because it's not as if, where were you at this time? Well, you know where you were because everybody knows where everybody is in prison.
Another story that we're looking at, which, the photograph is pretty shocking, and it's basically the photograph of an overturned and wrecked Garda car. This happened the other night. It's to do with the Lucky Dip gang, which our colleague Ken Foy discusses with us on numerous occasions on this podcast. And he's pointed out that the Lucky Dip gang are largely a group of juveniles, and they have been through the system. And the same thing happens in Overstown House.
Yes.
They may be arrested, they may be pursued, and they go to be put through the system, into custody, but they're back out very quickly again. And this has allowed them to become so emboldened that this Garda vehicle, this is just one incident containing 2 officers overturned after it was rammed by what's believed to be members of this Lucky Dip gang by a stolen Audi car in Finglas in the early hours of the morning. It's the most serious incident to occur on what was described as another night of dangerous chaos on the roads and motorways in the Greater Dublin area. Yeah,
I mean, we've obviously had 2 very significant incidents this week. There was the other case where 8 teenagers were injured as they crashed into a car of a totally innocent guy on the motorway. They were driving up the wrong way and crashed. And again, that's been linked. That car was, believed to be linked to a stolen vehicle from the Lucky Dip gang. So this is the second incident in a week. What happened was the guards had deployed a stinger device, where they put the thing on the road to flatten the tyres, and the stolen car came out of a lane and crashed straight into the Garda vehicle, causing it to spin before ending up on its roof. So the Lucky Dip gang, I mean, they're called that because the name came from the fact that they would open up a map, Google Maps or whatever, and pick a town and go to that town and carry out robberies and take these cars. Now, we've often talked about how the gangland murder rate, for example, has dropped dramatically in this country. And it has. And the guards certainly deserve credit, and they would say there's all these statistics showing that, there's much less gun crime, etc. But, this type of motor crime is really escalating. And what has happened is there's this grouping called the Lucky Dip gang, which is sort of a loose arrangement, but not totally loose, of people mostly from the age of 14 to 18. And they're targeting certain types of cars. You can see them they're all over TikTok, posting them. You can see how they can break into these cars and get them going within 30 seconds.
Right.
Particularly targeting Japanese imports, which don't have automatic...
What, like?
Well, they don't have these immobiliser devices in the ignition.
Which cars?
Japanese imports in particular.
Which ones?
Basically, they're imported from Japan.
Yeah, and just to let our listeners and viewers know that Niall wouldn't be the most...
car-y sort of... Yeah, exactly. Motory.
It's proven.
Motor. No.
Did the silver bullet...
well, you have to... The silver bullet is my ageing Toyota Corolla that has a couple of knocks here and there, doesn't it? It's got a little bit of character, like myself.
There's been a little bit of kind of aggressive reversing that hasn't gone too well.
Well, I think of it more as more of an exciting driver than some, haven't I?
Do you say when you crash the car, the side of it or whatever, that you clip it?
A little nick is one of the terms.
A little clip.
And I do have the odd little thing happen to me, don't I?
Little clip
here or there.
Little tip. But all those words are so gentle for what really has, because your car sometimes does look as if it has been.
It's only good.
Car.
It's only good that I'm such an attractive man. Because if I was relying on my car to make me glamorous, it might not be work, would it?
See, this is the afternoon. This is the afternoon brain brain drain here now.
But yeah,
Got so
like,
distracted there.
yeah, but I do but it's a great car, the silver bullet, as it's called, because
Passed
it's
its
silver.
NCT.
It passed its NCT. And it's not young, like myself.
Got another 2 years in it.
It's not. It might have seen better days. It's not as young as it was, but it endures.
Stoic.
Put it this way, right? If the Lucky Dip gang are going around looking for cars, mine would probably be safe, would it?
I'd say it might be, yeah.
But anyway,
But mine would too, because it's not a Japanese.
yeah. But it's not the Japanese actual bit of it. It's the fact that they don't have these immobilizing.
I don't know what they mean.
Well, I don't fully know either, but it makes them harder to break into because they've no car crime in Japan.
Oh, right.
So they import them and then you have to install these things. So they go around, you can see them on TikTok. So the Lucky Dip gang are a real crime phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's probably actually something like the 1980s when there was joyriding had hit a peak. And I think, again, there was a technological aspect to that they were very easy to hotwire at the time.
Yeah.
But again, they figured out how to do this and it's going on and on. Now, the Oberstown thing is a huge frustration for the guards because I don't know in this case in particular, but you're seeing many of these cases where there's very serious ramming, you know, there may be burglaries involved, very serious crimes, and simply Oberstown doesn't have enough places to keep them. And also, the juvenile courts are probably fairly more reluctant to lock these people up.
Now, the non-juvenile courts again come into play with the story about the disgraced former solicitor Michael Lynn. He was jailed for 5 years and 9 months for stealing 18 million from 6 banks and was basically pursued across the globe. Where was he arrested? Was it Brazil?
It was Brazil. I mean, he ended up on remand in a Brazilian sort of hellhole prison.
Yes. And he was like, he was tracked down by investigators and by the Irish state for a long, long time before he was brought home and given this sentence. Now, he's been released early from prison, but he's carrying out community work at a church in County Wexford. So he is continuing that sentence, albeit it must be more pleasant to be carrying out work around a church in County Wexford on a summer's day than to be locked up.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the poster boys, wasn't he, for the Celtic Tiger after the collapse. There was 2 of them actually back in the papers as well this week. Michael Fingers Fingleton.
What was he doing back?
He passed away last weekend.
Did he?
Passed away last week.
Do you remember what age he was?
But he was I think he was in his 80s. I don't know.
Easily would have been, because I recall many years ago working on stories all around the sort of the collapse of the economy, etc. And he lived out in Shankill in a beautiful gated home. And I always think of him actually as I drove past there, whatever came of him. So that's what he was in the news where he passed away.
Yeah. Now, another guy, Sean Dunn, was he called the Baron of Ballsbridge?
Ballsbridge, that's right.
He was another.
Killelea.
I mean, he was a guy who probably was a billionaire or considered a billionaire at one point, and he's, went bankrupt. That bankruptcy I think it was refused a hearing at the Supreme Court in Ireland this week.
Yeah.
So he's probably come to the end of his legal battles, I suppose.
The bankruptcy was refused a hearing, meaning he's looking to come out of bankruptcy.
Well, he was looking to appeal a certain part of it to the Supreme Court. I think it was that, he was looking to come out of bankruptcy earlier.
Here we go again. No, because I was going to say to you that a lot of people who go into bankruptcy do so and move to the UK because it's a quicker process than here.
Well, he of course he had bankruptcy proceedings in 2 countries, in the US as well.
Yeah.
And he also had a bankruptcy hearing here. A lot of it was there was a dispute over the purchase. I think it was the most expensive home was it ever bought. It was a house in Shrewsbury Road.
Aylesbury, was it?
I thought it was Shrewsbury, but again,
himself and his wife Gail Killelea lived in it, and
then there was
celebrated couple who had met, I think, at the Galway races, and married on the Jackie Onassis yacht. They were absolutely the poster couple of those crazy heady Celtic Tiger times when we seemed to think that the entire country was just millionaires. Now, they were at the time.
Yeah.
But they invited guests, didn't they, including Bertie Ahern, etc., out to float around the Mediterranean on the Jackie O for a week as part of their wedding celebrations. When the economy crashed, I think, and in the aftermath of that in more recent times, their relationship has broken up, and obviously a lot of what we hear of them now is played through the court system, through what they owe in debts, etc.
So he was back in the papers this week, and then obviously Michael Lynn. So these were three of maybe a dozen people that were in the papers constantly over, which is now, it's not 20 years yet, but it's not far off.
And Lynn was released under this community return scheme, which is the same scheme that Alison Chalk has been released under, right?
Yeah.
And it's this incentivised early release programme, which is jointly managed by the Irish Prison Service and the Probation Service. Lynn himself had done 2.5 years in custody. What did I tell you? He got 5 years and 9 months.
Yeah.
So this scheme, this is what it allows: qualifying well-behaved prisoners to serve the latter part of their sentence in the community while completing unpaid supervised community work. So Lynn is working at this church in County Wexford, and he was one that was he was in Shelton Abbey.
He was, and we had
had
him pictured at a carol singing event while in Shelton Abbey.
He was on temporary release.
He was on temporary release, yeah. So, I mean, Lynn was a solicitor, and he had ultimately been found guilty of 10 out of a possible 23 charges of stealing 18 million from 6 different financial institutions. And the basis of the case, which is very complex, was that he'd obtained several mortgages on the same properties.
Mm-hmm.
And while the banks were unaware that the other banks were also giving it to them. He'd been a very public figure as he gotten wealthy, and he was a complex character, was he, Lynn?
Kind of slight catch me if you can type of a character.
I would agree.
He was pursued around. He kept moving from place to place. He was in Bulgaria at one stage, and
well, he was another one of these guys who always felt hard done by, I think, by being in the papers, despite the fact that ultimately he'd been convicted of very serious charges. Am I allowed to go back and say I made a mistake on Sean Dunn?
I thought you were going to say you made a mistake on the Japanese car.
No. Well, I'm going to well have done that as well.
The NCT made a mistake on passing yours silver bullet.
Yes. So the
road network.
The Supreme Court refused to hear a further appeal on a lawsuit taken by Sean Dunn against one of his sons and Gail Killalea, and it was over a multi-million euro trust that was linked to the purchase of that property that we talked about in Shrewsbury Road. Right. So obviously his bankruptcy is ongoing or whatever. So yeah, it's just funny if you be seeing it in other. I know we're not allowed to mention certain Kinahan people, but whatever happens to you, you get into this legal process, and 20 years later, you can still be in the middle of it. Michael Lynn, obviously, left the country, wasn't convicted till a very later point, and now he's just coming through it. I mean, in theory, he could have been done and dusted over a decade ago. And of course, Daniel Kinahan is facing charges for things that happened almost a decade ago as well. Yeah. It's interesting the way...
The past has a funny way of catching up on you.
It does.
Final story we're going to talk about is this teacher who was struck off after she lied about a sexual relationship with an ex-student who was 18. So Patrick O'Connell, our colleague, attempted to talk to 33-year-old Joanne Clark. Now, she was struck off by the teaching council after it emerged she lied about her relationship with a former pupil. And the High Court identified her in a published judgment and confirmed her removal from the Register of Teachers on foot of a decision by a fitness to teach inquiry. So that complaint against her was made by her school principal, and included that the principal had concerns that she'd had an affair with a sixth-year student, that she'd a sexual encounter with the student in August of 2018, and that she'd been communicating with the student via the social media platform Snapchat.
Yeah, I mean, she was 25 at the time. The pupil would have been 18 years old, so it wouldn't have...
Totally unsuitable.
Totally unsuitable.
I mean, look... that people at 18, you would imagine, is about to leave school, and perhaps, when there's a separation of that power dynamic, it's a completely different thing. But
Yeah, I mean, her claim was that that it was a one-off encounter while he was awaiting his leaving cert results. However, it had come to light because her boyfriend at the time had forwarded images from her Instagram account to the body that showed the pair together. Regulatory body.
Show them together between 2022 and 25, including on a holiday in Greece.
Yeah, I mean, now there was a long running sort of, I suppose it's a pseudo legal procedure, isn't it? It's an investigative procedure. It's not run by the state. It's interesting, I think, because we've seen quite a lot of these cases coming forward of female teachers, and this isn't just in Ireland. There's a number of high-profile ones in the US at the moment, and a number in the UK. These are cases that I don't think would have been brought maybe a decade ago or a couple of decades ago.
No, it didn't seem to be. There's no question, but if it's going on now, it was going on, in the past. But there was kind of like, is there a sense for a teenage boy, is it fear to come forward and say that?
Well, or is it a double? Yeah, I think it was definitely. There's one actually going on in the UK. It's a very interesting one because I think that the alleged incident occurred in the 1990s or 80s.
Yeah.
Now, that's very common when you see, male teachers and female pupils. Mm-hmm. But these cases are coming more and more, I think, because of a cultural change in society where I think 20 years ago or 30 years ago, people would have felt, sure, what are they complaining about, the boys, aren't they? It's every boy's dream and all of that. And in fact, some of the evidence in that case, are the victims themselves saying, "Oh, I didn't want to because of that." Mm-hmm. So it just shows you there is cultural change in these things, and this is an interesting one because, of course, it comes to light because of an ex-boyfriend of the teacher in question. But in other cases, there are, certainly in the ones in the US, you see these young boys coming forward. It's very counterintuitive, and there is a bit of that boys will be thought of as different than girls, if you know what I mean, that they couldn't be victims of sex crimes. But it certainly has been an historical thing that we haven't sort of recognised that.
Yeah. The pupil actually in this case gave evidence to the panel, including that he had not been in contact with the teacher before or after the admitted sexual encounter. And in this case, Justice Banville noted that while the panel's deliberations were ongoing, the teaching council was contacted by a colleague in a new school where she was working.
Yeah.
And the colleague indicated he had information relating to her and the pupil being in an ongoing and current relationship. So there's obviously different versions of what's happening there going on. Now, has it been a busy week apart from what we have been doing?
No, I mean, it's sort of a dominated. No, it's not a bit. It's definitely not a busy time.
It's still a summer kind of a week.
Oh, it's totally. I mean, it's totally. This is silly season, as they call it, and it's interesting. He cannot be mentioned as.
You're allowed to mention him. I'm not that strict.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you look at if you consider the lowly tabloid papers, Daniel Kinahan used to, provide us a lot of coverage, but the broadsheet newspapers, the level of coverage of the Kinahan cartel has been quite incredible, I think, actually, if you consider, maybe 10 years ago, I just don't think they would have done as much. But all of the broadsheet papers have really seem to love that story, don't they?
All the media. Is there anything funny happening?
Do you ever see these seizures of cocaine in South America where they get these big kilos and for some reason, I don't know why it is, I suppose it's a branding exercise, they've put a stamp of something on it.
Well, I tell you why that is.
Why?
And it's similar with ecstasy pills.
Yeah.
Because if they believe in their product and it's good stuff, they put the stamp on it so people come back to buy more. But I mean, it's like branding,
Any branding.
It's like Hugo Boss, Louis Vuitton, all those things. That's what it's all about, but unfortunately. But anyway, go on.
These are just on the kilos, though, so the punters don't get to see.
No, the punters don't, but the buyers do.
Well, anyway, there was 469 kilos of cocaine seized in Ecuador with the face of Erling Haaland stamped on them, the Norwegian footballer. I know you're a massive, obviously, soccer fan.
But can I ask, given how white and pale he is, how would you see his face on a block of cocaine?
And you can see it. I don't know. Or it does seem quite random.
Google this.
It does seem quite random in Ecuador to have Norway's finest on your cocaine.
But it's his name and a poster.
Yes,
I thought you just meant his face.
No.
His white hair.
No, it's specifically branded as Erling.
So, I'm sure he's not too happy about that.
He's quite a joker, actually.
Is he?
So I don't know if he would mind, but presumably he wouldn't necessarily like it. I presume he can't get a cut of the profits. It wouldn't be a good.
I wonder where it was destined for.
Well, I don't know, because I know he plays for Man City and he's a world superstar, so maybe it doesn't matter. But we have there's a lot of car names, isn't there? BMW and
there's all sorts of stuff. I think they do actually even use the designer brand names on some of the stuff as well.
Yes.
Like Louis Vuitton or whatever. But that's what it's about, it's like any other product, I suppose, that if you're shipping and selling, you want your own branding on it. You pick something that will be recognisable. Somebody buys that, thinks it's either good value or good quality or high cocaine content in it, and they'll come back for more. But they'll call it that. What's his name? Haaland. They'll come back for the Haaland cocaine.
Do you have any more of that?
Come back for the Niall Donald cocaine.
Well,
actually, that's when you'd have made it.
Yeah. And there was, in fact, I'm just looking at it here, there was 2021, there was Cristiano Ronaldo cocaine.
Yeah.
Just shows you soccer really does take over the world.
I've just seen a feature for you for next week. Somebody to do the soccer players whose names have been emblazoned on blocks of cocaine.
LeBron James.
That's a really good idea. You can have it.
Right, okay.
Have it. And anybody watching or reading the crimeworld.com, when you see that story go up, you'll know you heard it here first.
Right, okay.
Okay, so what is the plan for next week?
The same plan as every week, Nicola.
Which is what we have.
Survive day by day. I hope we don't get caught out.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Thanks.
Enjoy your weekend, everybody.